Now, I do not claim to be an expert animator. I focus mostly on modeling and texturing, a little bit of rigging. But there are a few things that I like to demonstrate for students who want to learn more about animation. And I like to use the bouncing ball lesson for that. Now, the thing about a bouncing ball is, like all moving objects that move in 3D space, you can break them down into, say, a horizontal motion and a vertical motion. So rather than keyframing it moving a bouncing motion to start with, I like to begin by keyframing the horizontal position, and then I go back and I keyframe the vertical position after I've got the horizontal motion taken care of. So I'm going to begin at frame 0, and this is me moving in, say, the X direction. So I'm going to keyframe the X direction by right-clicking on Translate X, key selected on frame 0, and then I'll go, let's go to frame 180. I can always adjust it later, and say it's going to go about yay far as it bounces. Right-click, key selected again, and now it moves like this. Now, if this ball has been thrown, it's going to fly into the scene at the maximum speed, bounce a few times, and then slow down as it goes. What's happening right now is it starts off slow, speeds up, and then slows back down again. So to fix that, I need to go to Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And this shows me the graph of the motion in the x-axis. And you can see starts slow, speeds up, slows back down again. So to change that, I will select my initial keyframe right here. And these little buttons right here control how it blends from one keyframe to the next. And I want this to be fairly linear, straight in, and then slow down. So I'm going to hit this linear tangent. It's going to start off its maximum speed and then taper off as it goes. Not going particularly fast, but I didn't throw this ball very hard, I guess. Now, as it bounces, it's going to impact the ground as it goes. Move this out of the way. And I would like to indicate those impacts to make sure it hits the ground while still moving in the x-axis. Let's say this is the first impact. I want to keyframe my translate Y. Right-click, key selected. Actually, I have one at the very, very beginning too. Right-click, key selected. There we go. And let's say the next one's going to take a second to fly into the air, or a second to land. I'm going to adjust it afterwards. Key select that one. And it's going to get shorter each time. Right-click, key selected, until this is the shortest one at the very end. So I got each of the impacts right here. Now the first one is not an impact. That's when it's still up in the air at its highest peak. I'm gonna move it up. I'm gonna replace my previous keyframe with a new one. So I'm gonna right click and key selected. This is the new keyframe. I can see what that does. Lands in there like that. Now I'll go midpoint between these two frames, lift it up a little bit. Not as high as the first one. Keyframe that one. And go midway here. How many do I have? It's 50, so 125. Lift that up. Not as much as the last one. Each time it gets shorter. Each time the bounce takes less time. Deselect. And then about midway here for the shortest one. Deselect again. Now, does that look like a bounce to you? Not really. Hang on. Oh, I forgot. Did I keyframe this one at 180? No, I did not. One. Deselect that one. There we go. Try that again. And you can see that even though it is going up and down as it goes, it is not looking like a bounce. It is just flying through the scene. Because just like with the horizontal motion, the vertical motion is also moving smoothly up and down. This should be, oops, that should be 0. That's why it's acting weird. There we go. Select this. I can just change that to 0. Sorry about that. Now you can see this vertical movement is also going smoothly up and down rather than having a sharp impact, bounce up, impact, bounce back up. It is swimming through the scene rather than bouncing. I want the tops of the bounces to be smooth, but the bottom need to be sharp and impactful. So I'm going to select all the bottom keyframes and turn these into linear tangents as well. Let's see if that looks any better. A little bit better. I think these could use some improvement. So with these still selected, there's this one right here that has a white line and an orange line. My mouse over says break tangents. Click on this. And now these tangents down here are separate tangents, and I can move them individually. So I'm going to first select the keyframe down here, then drag over the tangent, hit W for move, and use my middle mouse button, move that around. You can see what happens if I move it too far. The top part of the curve goes a bit wild. I want something more like this, so it's a steep hill. Grab this one. Once again, don't go too far. I want a steep hill. And using my move tool and my middle mouse button. Now I should bounce more like this. The cool thing is I have access to both my translate X and Y separately. If I want to, I could have it continue rolling forwards after the bounce ends by grabbing my last keyframe right here. And I could move this further. So instead of 26 point whatever, I'll make that say 35. Now it'll end here. So it makes it go further. So I'll make it move a little bit faster when it begins. I could also grab my last keyframe, and instead of ending at the same point as the others, I can make it continue rolling for another second, say 210. Has a little bit of slide at the end. And I can easily adjust these to get whatever results I like. Like, say, if I want my initial bounce to be a bit further, I could select all these down here, hit W for my movement tool. I'm going to hold down Shift, because I don't want this to go up and down. I want this to move in one direction. Shift, middle mouse, I can drag this forward. Of course, that doesn't mean I have to make some adjustments to this, like that. So I can get a bigger bounce to start with. Make whatever changes I like this. Maybe I'll make it take even longer to stop moving and end further along. I can even grab this. If I wanted to make it move faster at the very beginning, I could steepen this tangent. So it's got a much sharper incline right there. You can see how much faster that moves. And so with the graph editor, I can continue to tweak and adjust each of my keyframes and the way it blends between the keyframes until I get a perfect result. That'll take too long to get done, in my opinion, but that is the basic concept of the graph editor.